Welcome back to our discussion on how to develop your professional portfolio. Up until this point in our class, you have done your rough draft on the executive summary and the artifacts sections. Again, this week I'll read what you've turned in so far and provide you feedback on how you can improve your professional portfolio. This week's rough draft is on the final section of the professional portfolio, on the reflection section. We have three sections within the professional in the reflection section. One section is how you've improved. The next section is how you can continue to grow. And the third section is how you can develop in areas of your strength. Okay, so let me talk about those in a little bit more detail. The first section is how you've improved since you're an athletic training student. Is about 2 to 3 paragraphs in length. For those students who have been an practicing athletic trainer for a while, this section is not too difficult to write, but students that are straight out of their undergraduate program, this may take a little bit more effort. So if we think about the assigned specific code and practice standard, think about it since you were very beginning in your athletic training education program. How much work did you actually do in these areas as we reflect? Not just for this first rough draft, but as we go through the classes together. I want you to think back when you were a student, explain in the paper your experience in the specific code and practice as a student, and then how have you grown, developed, gotten better in the code and practice standards since you were an athletic training student. So again, 2 to 3 paragraphs, I would say at least one. My thinking is separate it by discussing the code first and then the practice standard second. I have a paragraph or 2 on the code, a paragraph or 2 on the practice standard, how you learned about this, practiced this, did this as a student, and then how you've improved and grown in that since you're a student. The next section is your growth. How can you continue to improve in the code and the practice standard? So I want you to give yourself some goals. What are some ways that you can develop as an athletic trainer in the specific code and the practice standard? Be very detailed here, as I include here, discuss any professional development you have done. This includes readings, research, collaboration, blah, 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 to improve on these areas. That can be part of your first section, or it can be ways that you can continue to grow by going to workshops and those type of things. Give yourself some ways that you can continue to improve in these areas. That's 3 to 4 paragraphs. Again, separate it by first discussing the code or practice standard, whatever way you started your portfolio. If you first started talking about the codes, continue always talking about the codes first. Or if you start talking about the practice standard first, continue talking about practice standards first. Be consistent through your writing. That's one of the things you'll see in my feedback, that in the executive summary section, you first describe code 1, then talk about in the artifact section, first starting about code 1, and then here in reflection, talk about code 1. Then go to practice standard 1 in your executive summary, in your artifact section, here in the reflection section. The third section is developing your strengths. I have information in our course about strengths. What is that about? Just some information. What I mean by strengths is what has been defined in the research as focusing on the things that you do well and not focusing on the things that you don't do well, which we will call a weakness. It's my belief that we should focus on our areas that we naturally are drawn to, and that we focus on those things instead of trying to fix the things that we're not all that great at. So as we think about, or as you think about the areas of the code and practice standard, which areas within these standards and these codes do you naturally gravitate towards, that you just kind of get in a groove in? How can you continue to develop in the area of your strengths? Now you can combine your plan for continued growing and improving and developing your strengths in this write-up, but it still should be anywhere from a page to 2 pages on your plan for growth. You can incorporate this, developing your strengths in your area of continuing improving in the code and the practice standards, which I'm fine with you doing that. But it still needs to be pretty detailed in explaining to me your goals and your plans to develop in this area and developing in your areas of strength. For your final portfolio, you'll actually turn in your courage and calling reflections, but for the rough draft, you don't have to turn in your courage and calling reflections for the rough draft. That's just due for the final paper due in a couple of weeks. So just for the rough draft, don't worry about the courage and calling reflections. Just write the how you've improved since being an athletic training student, your goals or your ways that you're going to continue to develop and grow, and how you're going to develop your areas of strength for the code and practice standards. As always, remember to support your thoughts and information with research using evidence-based academics. Cite those following APA, and if you have any additional references, make sure you cite them in the reference page following APA. If you have questions, post your questions in the Q&A forum. I'm here to help.